So picture this. It's the early 1800s, and America is just buzzing with energy. The country's growing like crazy. The population is booming, and the borders are pushing farther and farther west. It was this time of incredible ambition, this feeling that literally anything was possible.
But all of that growth, it comes with a really tough question, right? One that's at the very core of this whole story. What is the true cost of progress? Okay, let's get into it.
All right, to really get this, you got to put yourself in their shoes. Imagine a brand new United States just filled with people, hopeful people, packing up their entire lives to chase this dream of a new life out west.
And we're not talking about just a few families here and there. No, this was a massive, massive movement. For so many people, the West was this land of incredible opportunity. It was like a blank canvas, you know? A place where they could finally build the life they'd always imagined. But there was one huge problem. How do you actually get there? I mean, the country was enormous, it was wild, and you had the massive Appalachian Mountains sitting right in the middle. Trying to move people, and even more crucial, the supplies to support them, was, well, a total logistical nightmare.
So what did they do? How'd they solve it? Well, this is where that classic American ingenuity just kicks into overdrive. We're talking about some incredible technological breakthroughs that literally, and I mean literally, paved the way west.
Okay, so the first steps were pretty basic, right? They widened some roads for wagons, got some stagecoach routes going between the big towns. Then you had turnpikes, basically toll roads. You'd pay a fee to pass a pole or a pike. But look, these were just band-aids. They weren't going to get you across those mountains.
The real game changer? The Erie Canal. And you have to stop and think about this for a second. We're talking 363 miles of canal, dug completely by hand by thousands of workers over 8 years. No modern machinery. Nothing. It was just this monumental achievement that suddenly connected the farms out west directly to the markets back east.
And the economic impact? Whoa, it was staggering. Get this, before the canal, to ship goods from, say, Buffalo to New York City, it might cost $1. After the canal, less than a dime. And it took half the time. This one project absolutely supercharged the whole country's economy and the push to settle the West.
And right when the canal is changing everything, an even faster technology shows up on the scene, the steam locomotive. I love this part. In 1830, you've got Peter Cooper's engine, the Tom Thumb, chugging along at what was then a mind-blowing 18 miles per hour. A whole new era was starting.
Now, let's be clear. Early train travel was not comfortable. The cars were drafty, the seats were basically wooden benches, and the tracks were all fragmented, short little lines. But you know what? It didn't even matter. The speed, the sheer power of the railroad, it was undeniable. It quickly became the engine driving people west.
And this is where the story takes a really sharp turn. Because with every single road they built, every canal they dug, every mile of track they laid down, a huge question started to loom. Whose land was this, really? Because it wasn't empty. And not triumph of technology, it was about to create a deeply tragic human conflict.
So, this brings us to the other side of that coin of progress. The really painful part of the story. The systematic removal of the Native American people who had called these lands home for centuries.
Yeah, by 1830, every new road, every new canal, it wasn't just a path for settlers moving west. You have to see it as a line being drawn in the sand, pushing Native Americans further and further from their homes. Displacement wasn't an accident. It became a deliberate, calculated government policy.
And this all became official with the Indian Removal Act of 1830. On paper, it gave the president the power to negotiate treaties to move eastern tribes west of the Mississippi. But let's be real about what these negotiations actually were. They were often full of coercion, fraud, bribery, all designed to do one thing: clear the land for settlers.
So to really wrap our heads around this conflict, we've got to listen to the people who are actually there. We're going to look at the official justifications coming from the U.S. government, and then we're going to hear the desperate pleas from the native nations being forced from their homes.
So facing this just overwhelming pressure, 5 major southeastern tribes, the Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole, they tried something pretty remarkable. They adopted a strategy of adaptation. They thought, okay, we'll adopt the settlers' ways. They started farming, building permanent homes, they even published a newspaper. The thinking was, if they could just prove they could coexist, they'd be allowed to keep their land. But, so tragically, it just wasn't enough.
And here's the official line from President Andrew Jackson himself. He actually argued that removal was a humanitarian act. He said it was a way to save Native Americans from what he saw as an inevitable conflict with settlers, to basically prevent their extinction. So he's framing this whole thing as not just necessary, but honorable.
But the Cherokee Nation, they saw it, as you can imagine, completely differently. In this incredibly powerful appeal to Congress, they laid out their case with just heartbreaking clarity. They said, look, our right to this land isn't from some piece of paper, some treaty or sale. It's our inheritance from time immemorial. And that right there shows you the fundamental clash of two entirely different worldviews.
And the Cherokee didn't just make an emotional appeal. They took their fight to the system all the way to the Supreme Court. And guess what? They won. In a landmark case, the Supreme Court actually sided with them. They ruled that the state of Georgia had zero authority over sovereign Cherokee land. But a win in court doesn't mean anything if the person in charge won't enforce it. And President Andrew Jackson, he just ignored the Supreme Court. His famous response was basically, the Chief Justice has made his decision, now let him enforce it. It was this stunning defiance of the rule of law, and it sealed the fate of the Cherokee. The very system that was designed to protect them failed them.
4,000. Just let that number sit for a second. That's the human cost of that failure. In 1838, the U.S. Army rounded up 15,000 Cherokee, men, women, and children, and forced them from their homes at gunpoint. On the brutal months-long march west, about 4,000 of them died, from disease, from starvation, from the freezing cold. We now know that journey as the Trail of Tears.
And the story, it doesn't end there. The policies that led to the Trail of Tears, policies of removal and confinement, they would go on to shape the entire relationship between the United States and Native nations for the next 100 years, and really right up to today.
The final piece of this puzzle was the creation of the reservation system. An act in 1851 made it official policy to move tribes onto these designated pieces of land, often land that was hundreds of miles from their actual homes. And that's a system that, for the most part, is still in place today.
And all of this leaves us with a really difficult, unsettling question to think about. There's no doubt the 19th century was an era of incredible progress. I mean, the canals, the railroads, they built a modern nation. But that nation was built on a foundation of just profound pain and injustice. So how do we remember a history that's both of those things at once? How we choose to remember both the progress and the pain, well, that says everything about who we are.